Hey everyone, my name is Wedge. It doesn't seem possible, but we're already getting ready for another new set with Dragons of Tarkir spoilers starting on Monday. With that in mind, we decided it'd be a good time to do what we did before Fate Reforged and recap the Uncharted Realms articles that bridge the gap between Ugin's revival and a present full of dragons. The first story set after the Reforged chain in which Sarkhan successfully saved Ugin from death and so unmade that particular version of himself is The Truth of Names by James Wyatt. In terms of overarching plot, it doesn't contribute much to the continuing storyline other than establish that the Mardu are fighting more dragons than ever. However, it did reveal an interesting tidbit about Alicia, the Khan of the Mardu horde, during the time of Fate Reforged. Specifically, it tells the story of how Alicia chose her war name at the time. Mardu chose their own war names instead of having them assigned by the Khan. Up until that day, her fellow Mardu believed Alicia to be a man, but when she chose the war name Alicia, which had been her grandmother's name before her, she indicated that she was, in fact, a woman. To put it more directly, she's transgender, the first such character in Magic's history. From there, we move on to The Doom of the Golden Fang, also by James Wyatt. As the title implies, the story is the beginning of the end for Tasigur and the Sultai brood as a whole. It starts with an assassination attempt on Tasigur via poisoned food. Kadal, one of the Rakshasa in Tasigur's court, manipulates him into believing that the culprit was a Sultai warrior named Yala, who had an audience with him the previous day. In exchange for that information, Tasigur promised Kadal her soul to feed on once he was done torturing her in punishment for her treason. However, after accosting her, Tasigur probed Yala's mind and found no memory of treachery. He kills her in frustration, royally ticking off Kadal by denying him the alleged traitor's soul. Kadal reveals that it was he who actually poisoned Tasigur's food, all in an attempt to manipulate him into handing over Yala's soul. As Tasigur confronts him, Kadal simply leaves, taking Shadiki, a Naga, and Tasigur's court necromancer with him. Without the aid of Rakshasa and Naga magic, his rule over the Sultai slowly falls apart. When his palace is assaulted by Silumgar, one of the dragon lords kept alive by Ugin's survival, Tasigur sees no choice but to preserve his own life by pledging loyalty to the mighty dragon. Next up is No End and No Beginning by Nick Davidson. Some years after Ugin and Bolas's battle, the Abzan are still fighting Dramoka and her brood. The dragons are so tough that the Abzan, under the leadership of their Khan Dagatar, can't seem to do any lasting damage to the larger ones. Even the smaller ones take great effort to bring down, even as the Abzan forces diminish with every attempt. And all the while, the storms from which Tarkir dragons originate are pouring out more of the beast than ever. Dagatar hears out the council of the Abzan inner circle on the matter and then retreats to his chamber. In his chamber, Dagatar takes down an amber battle mace from the wall called the Remembrance. The Remembrance is so named because it contains the spirits of some of the earliest Abzan and thus some of the present clan's oldest and most revered ancestors. The spirits in the Remembrance are abusive toward Dagatar, but ultimately impart their advice to keep in mind that his actions affect not only the present Abzan, but the future of the entire clan. With this in mind, Dagatar seeks an audience with Dramoka, carrying the Remembrance with him in case he should need to fight. He tries to negotiate a peace with Dramoka, but the Dragon Lord refuses to accept the Abzan as they are. Dagatar comes to understand from Dramoka's offense that even the Abzan's communication with ancestral spirits is considered by the dragons to be a deplorable act of necromancy. And so, in the interest of his clan's survival, he smashes the Remembrance on the ground, releasing the spirits within. To stay alive in alliance with Dramoka, necromancy is forbidden within the Abzan houses. This actually gives us an important tidbit on how mechanics are going to change in Dragons of Tarkir. Specifically, we're moving from 3 color clans to 2 color dragon broods. Remember when they said that they thought of the clans as a center color, one ally and one enemy, rather than one color and both of its enemies? In other words, why, for instance, Abzan is the white clan and not the black one. This is why, by taking off that enemy color, we're left with an allied color pair that forms a dragon faction alignment. Anyways, returning to the fiction, we look next at the tellingly named Khan Fall by Kelly Diggs. In this story, Shu Yun, Khan of the Jeskai Way, calls a summit of Khans, an unprecedented alliance of clans against the unprecedented threat of the dragon broods. All the Khans we've met are in attendance save Dagatar. Instead, we meet Rayhan, who leads a splinter faction of Abzan who refuse to bow to Dramoka. Also, nobody seems to know that Tasigur has pledged himself to Silumgar. I wonder whether that might be a significant detail. The attendees of the summit agree to seek out Ugin and try to get an answer from him. But just then, dragons approach the Jeskai stronghold, and surprise, surprise, Tarkir is nowhere to be found. And so here is where the clans meet their fate, to be replaced with the Dragon Lords and their broods from here on out. Shu Yun negotiates with Ojutai, his life and the life of all Jeskai, with the Dragon Slayer's mark in exchange for the safety of the rest of the Jeskai. Ojutai accepts. However, in defiance of the dragon's will, Shu Yun's scribe Quan hides part of the annals of the Sage Eye, the recorded history of the Jeskai, in a secret underground chamber. In light of the dragon's rise to power, Silumgar has Tarkir chained up as a trophy in his throne room, rather than acting as Khan of anything. Rayhan and her Obzan Splinter faction die fighting Dramoka. The rest of them survive under the alliance forged by Dagatar. Since Kolaghan doesn't seem particularly interested in lording her power or her brood over the humans of the former Mardu horde, Alicia and her clan basically coexist quite happily with Kolaghan's dragons. It's fitting enough, but with Mardu being the red-centered clan and red traditionally being dragon's primary color. Yasova makes an offering to Atarka in the form of the fruits of their hunting efforts, pledging the Temur to the dragon as her loyal hunters. The dragons forbid mention of the word Khan or of the names of the clans of old, and so they learn to coexist. This brings us up to the present day in A Tarkir of Dragons by Kimberly Cranes. Sarkhan emerges from his time-traveling adventure. He's dumped out in the present by the paradox formed when he saved Ugin, preventing the very method he used to travel back to the past. However, he seems unaffected for the journey and has all his memories of going back and saving Ugin and of the Tarkir that existed before then. And Sarkhan's absolutely overjoyed to see the Tarkir of the present full of dragons again, perhaps as it always should have been. Here we get to see some of the interesting changes in this alternate present. A goblin with the war name Ankle Shanker who had died in the original timeline survived here, but goes by the name Vile Smasher. Zurgo exists as well, but he is Helm Smasher no longer. Now he's known as Zurgo Bell Striker. He's called that because it's his duty to sound a bell that seems to summon dragons. Sarkhan's conversation with Zurgo and Vile Smasher also indicate that Sarkhan was never truly born into this timeline. He instead came into existence seemingly spontaneously at the moment he emerged from the temporal vortex. As a side note, Vile Smasher at one point refers to Kolaghan Dragon Lord, indicating that the Dragon Lords from Fate Reforged are still alive in the present. One of the pieces of art in the story depicts a dragon whose design matches Kolaghan the Storm's Fury, so we may well be getting new cards for the 5 Dragon Lords. Sarkhan realizes that if Zurgo's role is changed, then perhaps he never killed Narset and thus she's still alive. Having bonded with Narset considerably before traveling back to the past, he takes on his dragon form and speeds off in the direction of the Dragon's Eye Sanctuary, the greatest stronghold of Ojutai's faction, to find her. He enters the highest tower of the stronghold and finds not Narset, but instead Master Taigam, who in this timeline remained loyal to Ojutai rather than defecting the Jeskai to join the Sultai. When questioned about Narset, Taigam explains that she is no more and has met with the fate of a heretic. Sarkhan takes this to mean that she's dead, but from context it seems more likely that whatever her heresy was, it led to Ojutai's brood to go all 1984 on Narset. That is, they've stricken all record of her from memory and pretend she's dead, essentially making her an unperson. Sarkhan seeks out Ugin to get help in finding Narset and making things right. Now this is pure speculation, but based on what we know, it's likely Narset's heresy was one of 2 things. Maybe she found the annals of the Sage Eye that were hidden away before Shu Yun's death. The Dragon Lords wouldn't take too kindly to that. Alternatively, going all the way back to the hints that Narset had a latent spark in the Khan's timeline, maybe in this timeline that spark ignited. If she plans to walk away to another plane, came back to Tarkir and told others about the existence of worlds where dragons didn't reign supreme, well, it's one way to get them good and angry. So that's where we're at now. In the coming weeks, we'll no doubt learn about the fate of the other former Khans in the new timeline. We'll be seeing Ugin very soon, if Sarkhan's inner monologue is anything to go by. And hopefully we'll be seeing Narset as well, but not before Dragons of Tarkir spoilers start up on Monday. What do you all think about the timeline and story so far? I gotta know how you're feeling. Leave some comments below and we'll talk about it. As always, subscribe for the latest and most reliable Dragons of Tarkir spoiler information you could ever need. This is the Manosaurus, I'm Wedge, thanks for watching, we'll see you next time.